Hello and welcome back to A Better World with Mitchell Jay Rabin. We're very glad you're joining us again today. We're going to have another very interesting show today. I dare say we have a special guest who is an engineer and inventor of a kind of technology that interfaces with consciousness, interfaces with health and healing and wellness, such that we actually call it, among other things, the Wellness Accelerator. What an interesting idea. So first of all, I just want to say as a general comment and to let you all know that coming up very soon, we'll be sponsoring, A Better World will be sponsoring a series of workshops on something called total biology. Some of you who are regular listeners have tuned into Gilbert Renaud and others over the course of the past couple of years to learn more about this rather beautiful and fascinating study of understanding the role of the mind in the body. It's like a consummate way of understanding that precious relationship, so long misunderstood. For information about that, please call us at 212-420-0800 or go to our website, www.abetterworld.net, and learn more about it and when the classes are being offered and join in. So that's for the beginning of the hour, but now we're going to delve into a really interesting subject with Ray Caamano, who is the inventor, the lead inventor of this technology that I referenced that helps people get clear of stress through their own efforts, actually. And then actually through their own, if I may say, effortless efforts as time goes on, and clear the deck, clear their mind so they can carry on in ways that are meaningful to them and focused and coherent. These are issues, actually, that plague everybody these days, and we're very glad to have with us Ray Caamano with us, who has been spending years working at this and developing this and bringing it to the foreground, because we all know that stress is considered to be the number one killer, really the primary cause behind 80 to 90% of illnesses. And what's behind stress but our perception? And that's the subject of today's show. Welcome, Ray. It's good to have you.
Very wonderful to be here, Mitchell. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, what does this Wellness Accelerator / aka release meter do?
Well, actually, it's a beautiful piece of technology that presents to us something that's actually very simple, and that is that on a 24-hour basis, most of us are having stress responses in the brain that are actually quite detrimental to us in the long run. And we made it very simple to see that, and so one could illustrate it to themselves in a live mode. So if one were to put on this lightweight little wireless sensor, they would actually see on their computer screen the ongoing stress responses that are kind of coming in and minimizing, or say in some senses deteriorating, our life experience. And it gives us an opportunity to get to know what it feels like to actually drop those stress responses and shift into a higher part of our brain, which allows our body to follow, in a sense, and be much more peaceful and not under stress. And that's really what it is. So the sensor in itself that's how simple it really is, but it was a very elegant development process that brought us to that point.
I hear basically from what you're saying and from my own observation of myself and from others that we spend a lot of time in our reptilian brain. And as most people know, that's what we call the fight and flight function. It's what we needed when we were dealing with lions and tigers and bears. And yet we live in the 21st century now in the middle of New York City and other urban areas across the world, and people are still behaving as though they have to defend themselves from lions, tigers, and bears. It's problematic for the brain, it's problematic for the blood, it's problematic for the tissue. And yet we perpetuate this kind of lifestyle. You're really bringing forth a possibility for something else.
Yes, and most people may not relate to that, that we're actually behaving that way, that we're actually in fear. But it's just, as anyone would know it as maybe their unwanted feelings, maybe a feeling of anxiety here and there, or maybe not quite being at peace with what they're trying to accomplish in life. There's just these various mixtures of these internal experiences that are really variations of this very thing that we're speaking of, this fight or flight response. So it's not just that intense fear that most people wouldn't want to admit they had, like when a car is almost going to hit you in the street. That would be a very peak experience of it, but it goes down to, as you put it so eloquently, it's a kind of a low-grade fever.
Yeah, right.
So we experience the low-grade fever more as maybe not in harmony with your mate, and maybe not in harmony with your job situation, maybe struggle towards bigger goals in life, or maybe if you're an artist, maybe struggle with getting a flow of what you want to achieve as an artist or a musician, or whatever it might be, whatever you're pursuing in life. It's those hindrances, those internal limitations that one feels and kind of accepts or resigns himself that, I have to live this way.
So if somebody uses this meter on a regular basis, Ray, what is it that they could expect? What kind of results have you seen so far in your bringing this forth to people?
Well, I like to push that over to the ones that have actually experienced it. And so what I'll do is I'll give a web address so people can actually look and see what people have experienced in their own words. And that is www.icaptech.com is the website. But I'll send them over to YouTube. That'd be better. It would be www.youtube.com/icaptech. And there are these videos of people's real own experiences. And anyone can readily go there and start to view those and see, in their own words, their own experiences. But in general, transformations from stressful situations to peaceful ones, without the actual situation changing, like, say, a loss of a loved one. There's one of our customers had experienced that recently, and asked me what to do, and I just gave her a series of exercises that are in the ICAP to do. And
in the software,
yeah,
which is part of the release meter.
Exactly. And in that area, she went and did those exercises. It took her about 2 weeks to do them. And she completely transcended the grief of her mother's passing in about 2 weeks. That's not a very long time for something that significant. And she was almost incapacitated and couldn't really work in her business. And back to
Interestingly, she happened to know the woman. I met her recently as well out on the West Coast, and she's a doctor.
Yes.
And a naturopath, and was so incapacitated she really couldn't even see her patients.
Yes.
So I had the pleasure in this case of meeting her and interviewing her.
Right.
And I saw firsthand myself, which is one of the reasons I personally have been very excited about this, and I've wanted Ray to come onto the show and have helped to let people know about what this very simple and elegant technology really does and what its promises for people. I mean, on the one hand, as I understand, Ray, it has the effect of clearing stress, and that opens up the door for people to lead healthier lives. I think a lot of people have gotten fastened to the role of other modalities having to do with diet and supplementation and the like. While it plays a very important role, one moment of rather intense wrath or anger or fear will just short-circuit the blood in such a way that the nervous system, which with tentacles throughout the body to virtually every cell, will acidify the body in an instant. So all the work done to create an alkaline state of tissue is disturbed and rendered almost useless.
Yes, the stress responses originating in the brain that are actively causing distress in our nervous system via at least 7 different things that are happening. Pupils dilate, breath goes erratic, heart rate goes erratic, stressor hormones are secreted into the blood.
Pupils dilate.
Yep, and blood is diverted away from the digestive system. All those things are happening. So I I eat healthy. I eat as healthy as I possibly can. I take as many things that I feel are good for me to take, and clean water and all of that. But I also supplement it with the regimen of clearing the mind, because I believe that what we're doing to our bodies via our mind, via our brain, is far more detrimental than these things that we perceive as environmental toxins.
It's what you say you feel, but it's been scientifically demonstrated. So it's beyond a feeling, it's beyond a personal perception. But we have documented what the role of stress really is. So when we talk about wellness and creating a healthy lifestyle, it seems that the first order of business really does have to do with stress reduction, stress elimination to the extent possible. And what you've come up with here is a kind of a guidance and a really fine tool to support and assist that.
Yeah, it's a GPS system to stress elimination.
Yeah.
And it's been a little elusive, and that's why we've had to live with stress for so long, because we've never been able to see what this shows. It shows it right there, going on in the brain, and right when you're thinking of a stressful situation, that's right on screen. There it is. And it is combined with the actual protocols that were developed by Lester Levenson, physicist from New York, who achieved a full liberation of stress responses in 1952. Some people call that realization, some people call it full awareness. This was something that Lester Levenson achieved, and he also created
He called it happiness.
He called it happiness. He goes, that's why I like the word happiness instead of God, infinity, truth. So we have a lot.
I'm happy.
Right. We have a lot of words for this state, but we all, whether we realize it or not, that's all we're here through. Everything that we're doing, we're trying to get to, and this is a way of internally getting there. Shortcutting all the things you think you have to go through to get to it, and experience the full beauty of life. So we don't have to live like we've been living. We just have to make a decision to change it. And it's really nice to have instrumentation to show you where you're at, and have a method also to actually change. If you take a stressful situation that you may be experiencing in your life, and you use the system with the guided course that is in it, the abundance course, you will eliminate your stress responses around any particular area you work on. And eventually what you find out is you get to it, there's no more areas to work on. And you're accepting everything as being wonderful, beautiful, and your experience reflects it.
Well, you just reminded me that the cap of ICAP is courageousness, acceptance, and peace. So there you have it. That's what is possibly in store. Now, what you've got here is also describable, of course, as an EEG sensor. And EEG technology has been around for, probably somewhere in the vicinity of 50 to 75 years. What is it that distinguishes this from what neuropsychology and neurofeedback specialists have been using?
Well, as product developers from Silicon Valley, my team has been involved in many different endeavors with big companies, and we are consumer product developers. And EEG is a fantastic technology, but it isn't quite usable by the masses because there are wires with gel onto your head with some kind of a cap. It looks like you had some kind of brain injury if you got this thing going on.
Or you've just emerged from the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, exactly. So it's bound to a clinical environment is the point. Clinical interpretations of the waveforms and so forth, not usable in a typical consumer type application. So we wanted to correct that because it is a fantastic technology, and if you're looking at the right things, you can make a lot of progress with yourself on a daily basis. So we created an algorithm, which is one of the most valuable assets that ICAP has, that takes a look at many various types of brain waves and patterns, and it converts it into one readable output, which is high reading is stress response, low reading is absence of stress response, and that's really all you see. But with that, you're able to do a tremendous amount. So the sensor itself is a dry wireless 1.4 ounce sensor that is worn in a sports headband, and it's so light. I mean, we were at a show this weekend, and we had several customers walking off with them on their heads because they didn't realize they were wearing them. And I said, "Wow, that's funny. It's a testament to the technology."
Come back here.
They were quite embarrassed when they realized it, but
that's $1,300 on your head. It's an expensive hat.
I actually take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
So that's the breakthrough in the technology, in that it's usable, dry, wireless. You can use it for hours and hours and hours. Many of our customers do. To get the benefits and the life changes that you're seeking to achieve outside of your retreats, outside of whatever you're doing for your spiritual / stress reduction development, whatever's going on, whatever things you're doing, those are all great. But here's a way to sustain those gains throughout your life.
Now, how about in the case of someone who has a meditation practice or contemplative practice of some sort, or a different psycho-emotional therapeutic modality that they get a lot of benefit from and have for many years and really like using? How is your meter applicable? Is it applicable to those situations if they're not particularly interested in using the modality that you have chosen to put on the system?
Well, it's absolutely applicable, because there's a live session area in this thing, and whatever you're doing, your success with it is determined by low readings. Any modality that's getting you to lower stress response, to lower it or to eliminate it, is a wonderful modality. We happen to use the one that we know works. We know it works ourselves, and we've used it ourselves, and we support it for the people who are using it. But the live area, the live session, is an area that allows you to experiment and see your success, see your internal success with your process, whatever it is, and deepen it, because you have an actual feedback. At the end of the day, this whole thing called letting go, stress reduction, and all that is really an internal process. It's nonverbal. And I think it's about time that there was a way for everyone to get their hands on something that'll show us, be a guide in this whole nonverbal process. It's an internal, nonverbal process.
It's nonverbal, but it's also verbal. It has to do with a conversation that we have with ourselves and have had since perhaps even time immemorial, having to do with our own sense of self-worth, our own sense of self-value, and self-image. And this generates an internal subconscious conversation which shows up in our lives as either a beautiful, successful life or one that is at a different degree of success. So there is an imagistic gestalt aspect to it, and there's also a literal linguistic aspect to it. The two are really merged.
My only point with that statement was that I sit with it for hours and hours doing these internal experiments of how I deepen my letting go or my relaxation.
Right.
And if I were to try to put words to it while I'm doing that, I would go up to higher readings.
Oh, yes. I understand that. Right. I was saying that the cause of a lot of stress is our own internal dialogue, which often comes from any number of different sources that has us doubt ourselves, doubt our value, not really acknowledge ourselves as infinite beings. It's just something we don't want to consciously accept.
That is absolutely true.
So your work in this regard, Ray, I feel has been making a real contribution to society. I want to just say that at Ray's invitation, I spent some time, and Larry Crane's, out on the West Coast at Asilomar, which is this absolutely beautiful retreat center outside of Monterey, California. And there I saw a lot of people, Ray, that you have been in dialogue with using this release meter, whose lives are really changing, some of whom are documented on the website, on the YouTube, but others who are not. And it was very impressive to see that these people are like coming to themselves. And it's very powerful. It's shifting that inner conversation. That's why one of the ways I would put it, from being negatively based and oriented, which is sort of a default position that we all, as Werner Erhard said, is sort of our background listening in society. Wherever you look, wherever you go, there's a story telling us how we're not good enough. And at a certain point in time, we began believing this falsity and making it real and actually literally realizing it, materializing it in our lives. And it's a lie.
Right.
So, well, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show again and weighing in. But before I let you go, if you would just share with us one story with someone who has particularly impacted you meaningfully that you have worked with using the release meter in terms of helping them let go of stress and getting to another level.
Well, of many, I like the ones that actually end up in monetary gain. And
that's always fun.
I have to mention my good friend, Gordon Bray, who had a very serious financial stress some years ago, utilized the technique, and is now, I think, up over $15 million in net worth. Again, very happy. I do know spends a lot of time on the release meter.
He does?
Oh, absolutely. Owns several of them. And
does he wear a few at a time?
I think he has them in all locations where he is.
All locations.
Yeah, and his family members and so forth. He doesn't want to share his, so. But anyway,
isn't that so? You're saying he went from a state of, no money to $15 million, but you said again.
Mm-hmm.
That's
well, he initially, he was fairly successful in his work, and then had a total meltdown, and it really wiped him out. So, he was rested there for a while, and then brought himself back up exclusively by the use of the method and the meter. Exclusively.
Wow. Well, that's a warm and encouraging note to leave on, Ray. Thank you very much for all of your good work. It's really special.
Thank you, Mitch.
And,
thank you, Mitchell.
Great to have you. Ray Caamano, who is leaving our studio to head back to the West Coast. He was kind enough to come in and share these thoughts with us and his experience and his good invention before taking off. So, bon voyage. Have a great trip. So let's take a momentary pause, and we will continue for the second half of the show. And for those of you who are here, I want you to also know you can call in while we explore the further dimensions of what we are talking about with stress management, health, and wellness. Welcome back to the second half of A Better World with Mitchell Jay Rabin. Very glad that you're joining us, and we'll be continuing on with these themes. And in fact, at this point, if anybody did want to call in and share your thoughts or feelings or ask any questions about what it is we've been talking about, either on this show or on any other past shows, certainly feel free. It's a great opportunity for me to chat with people. It's always fun, and it's always enlightening for me as well. So please know that. Our number here in the studio is 888-873-4643. That's 888-873-4643. So here we are looking at the subject of health and wellness and stress. How do we do it? What do we do? How can we get to the bottom of this, living in the contexts in which we live, in our urban environments, and deal with arising numbers of stress having to do with the food we eat, having to do with the toxins in the air, in the water, in the soil, the financial stress under which we all live, where we see a falling dollar everywhere in the world. We see that a military that continues to grow in its, how dare I say, arrogance in asserting itself all over the world and justifying it for any number of different self-interested reasons. How do we come to a state of inner peace and quiet, in which environment our health can really be shining? Because after all, we all know that health is our greatest wealth, and taking care of it and even cultivating it is of the highest priority for all people. So I invite you to call and contact me about this, 888-873-4643. You may disagree with my assessment of priorities here. You may want to challenge some of what I have been saying or what my guests have been saying. And that is all totally welcome, truly. Now, I want to bring up something that dovetails with this whole idea of health and wellness, and that is what we could call greatest health? What is a state of greatest wellness? Okay, sure, we can patch in. I see there's a caller in, and you are welcome. Daryl from the Bronx. Are you there?
Hi, Mr. Rabin. Thank you so much for taking my call. It's Daryl from the Bronx.
Absolutely, Daryl.
I missed the first part of your discussion with the gentleman that had the device. Could you identify the device again? I heard that it worked well with the Lester Loving technique.
Lester Loving. You know Lester Loving. No, well, actually, we referred to Lester Levenson.
Levenson, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. But your question reveals that you know one of my dear old friends, Lester Loving, who I also love.
Am I mixing two different therapies then?
Yes, you are.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's okay. Ask the question, and then I'll describe both.
I have three questions. One, could you give contact information for the gentleman who just left with the device?
Yes.
Two, describe the Levenson technique, and then describe the Loving technique and the difference. Is that too much?
No, it's not. But I'll give you the shorter rather than the longer versions of each. Each require, or at least it's justifiable to talk at length about each. First of all, for information on what Ray Caamano was speaking about, it's actually documented on our website at www.abetterworld.net, and go to our recommended resources, that link. If you click on that, you will come up with a lot of information regarding the release meter, and if you go below that link, you will see a photograph of Lester Levenson smiling with his beautiful shock of white hair. And click on that, and that will bring you to specific information about the release technique. Additionally, you can go to www.icap, I-C-A-P, tech,
I-C-E-P?
I-C-A-P tech, T-E-C-H.com, icaptech.com, and there you will find even further information. So start at abetterworld.net, look at there, go to the link below that, and then to icaptech.com. That will load you up there and give you a lot of information. Then, Lester Levenson, such an interesting story. In 1952, Lester Levenson, young Jewish boy from New York City, physicist and engineer, Upper West Side, as a matter of fact, actually he was 42, had a second massive heart attack. And he was told to go home by the doctors and put his affairs in order. Needless to say, we all know what that means. We can do nothing for you. Modern medicine has reached its limit. In 2 weeks, you're going to die. And so he did go home, but he was very afraid of dying. He really didn't want to die. And he looked at himself and he said, my God, I don't know how I created this mess, but I really did create it. So somehow, as a scientist, as a physicist, I'm going to figure out, doggone it, how to uncreate it. And, when you stare death in the face, it's a fairly strong motivator. And he, in fact, did a searing inventory of his own self. And he saw that he actually felt a tremendous amount of hostility toward a lot of people, including himself. And he felt a lot of anger and anxiety and fear in life in general, just as we were talking about earlier, Daryl, on the show. And he began slowly and surely to release and let go of these various feelings that he had, these unloving, unwanted feelings, really. Nobody wants to feel anger towards somebody. Nobody really wants to feel hatred or any such thing as that. And he just consciously began to let go. And he even asked himself these questions. Is my feeling these ways really a desire for approval of some sort from someone? Or is it my desire to control them, my wanting to control them or a situation? Or is it that I want to be safe and secure? Maybe these three items are the basis of most of my thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that became later elaborated into something called the Sedona method, which became very popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It should be said that Lester Levenson, after doing this searing inventory and self-examination and self-observation and starting to work consciously with his feelings, these unwanted feelings, by the way, the ones we don't like, in 3 months, he was completely free of all those feelings. He became what we say in the East is liberated. And he hung out in his apartment on the Upper West Side and walked around Central Park for actually some years, enjoying the freedom, enjoying the bliss, enjoying the peace, enjoying the happiness. At a certain point, I say, sort of not unlike the Buddha himself, who, after his own enlightenment, felt the very powerful urge to share his awakening with others, Lester also felt this call from above, if you will, to share what he experienced also with others. And that is when he really did articulate and began to teach what we know of as the Sedona method. He left this work when he died, which was not in 1952 or 53 or 54. He actually died in 1994. He doubled his age from when the doctors said he was going to pass. And by then, this had become a worldwide phenomenon known as the Sedona method in the hands of Hale Dwoskin, who was in a film that became quite well known called The Secret, and to Larry Crane, who is originally from the South Bronx in New York, a very successful businessman who he credited Lester Levenson with having saved his life from essentially a suicidal depression. He had tons of money. He had a beautiful wife. He had a huge, spacious penthouse apartment on Lexington Avenue. He had just been written up as a Entrepreneur of the Year or something of that sort in Time magazine back in the mid-'70s, and actually internally felt totally miserable. All of that outside success just did not reach him. He thought there would be more feeling, more happiness derived from all of that. But that, for him, wasn't the case. And he has since pioneered Lester's work in the world and runs workshops and retreats all over the place. So that answers that second part of the question. The third is Lester Loving. Oh, you know Lester Loving. Very few people do these days. But I had the good fortune of meeting Lester back in the mid-'90s when he was giving a series of workshops at TRS. Lester Loving was a very loving man. He was a tall black gentleman, and my silly humor, excuse me, who was scientifically oriented and knew a whole lot about ancient Egypt, about gemstones, and about sacred geometry. And he offered classes in the New York area recurringly on these subjects, and I videotaped actually a lot of the lectures, loaned them to a friend of mine who had moved to, of all places, Sedona, and she died and never got them back. So it's really unfortunate because Lester doesn't teach anymore, and I've got a huge amount of material on video, and I don't know where that video is, but Lester is a wonderful being, and he kind of slips in and out of Mark Becker's New Life Expos and other such places, and lives somewhere in the boroughs of New York. Did I answer your question, Daryl?
That was excellent, and I'm praying right now that you come in contact with that video so that we can, you know, the
so people can
coming out of
benefit.
me already.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That it can be made available to people because that information is really, really much needed at this point in time.
I agree.
Especially with what's going on. Mitchell, I'm going to go up on the website. I really appreciate your work. I've listened to the show sort of sporadically because of the internet nature of it.
Sure.
But thank you so much for the people who you bring to the I'm looking for the right term.
Airwaves.
Is that okay? We'll do that.
Whatever.
It's not the way I
Absolutely,
look at it.
Daryl.
The electronic waves.
Yeah,
the
there we
electronic
go.
waves.
Cyberspace.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. Are you in New York?
I am. I'm in New York.
I'm going to have to use the phrase "hunt you down." Because,
Well, I'll make it easy for you and for all the other listeners. At www.abetterworld.net, we have a newsletter right on the homepage. Sign up for it. You'll be in the loop. We have a growing community of people part of A Better World. It's wonderful. It's actually international and local in scope. We offer classes in such things as I began talking about called total biology. We're going to be offering classes in therapeutic theater. We're going to be offering classes in the use of the release meter and the release technique for those people who get them. We're always offering interesting things or promoting things that have value. And the television show is aired every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And you'll get to learn all about that by going to visit the website.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great
Stay
for you to
blessed
call.
and highly favored.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So if anybody else wants to call in, you're welcome to at 888-873-4643. But until such a moment, I will carry on with these thoughts regarding stress management, stress reduction, and the importance. You know, if you think about it, if we were living a purely stress-free life, who is it that we would be? Do you realize how identified we all happen to be with our personal dramas that are born of stress? Think about the way our lives go. Think of the interactions we have and the investment we have in them and the emotional charges that come along with them. And we sort of bounce along in our lives, sort of like a, not a ping pong game, but what are those machines that you click on the sides, and the pinball machines? Thank you. And if you think about it, it hits a little bumper thing, and the light goes on, and you hit another, and another light goes on, and our lives are sort of like bumping along in the dark in so many ways, from one emotional reaction to another. But if you could step outside of that, use your imagination to step outside of that box and see that that is what our lives basically consist of so much, distinct from the idea of having an affirmative goal and going toward that goal in an uninterrupted fashion, where in a linear way we just go for the gold. Wouldn't that be cool? Uninterrupted by all of the emotional charges, all the dramas, all those things that tend to slow us down, divert us, capture our attention, detour us. What if we really wanted to be a great cellist, for instance? Just as an example. And what we saw in our lives, that there were so many other people calling us, asking us out, go here, go there, do this with me, do that with me. And we want to do all those things because it's fun. But our goal in our heart and our soul, whatever that may be actually, cello or otherwise, becomes blurred, it becomes clouded, and we almost forget what our goals are. Some say that we've been imprinted with our goals, actually an entire contract before we come into the physical realm, before we actually take on a physical body. What an interesting idea. I'm not going to say it's true or not true, but it's embodied, this idea, oh, no pun intended, in metaphysical texts from time immemorial, that we come here to, in physical form, actualize certain visions, dreams, goals, values that we stand for in our higher spiritual self. And we're given the opportunity to materialize a physical vehicle we refer to as a body, to bring this into three-dimensional life. It's cool to think about. We've got the visible world and we've got the invisible world, and we're always seesawing between these two, whether I think we realize it or not. What if we could be so clear as to what our contract was that when we come into this life, we stay on track? It's a cool idea. So if we go back to the first half of our show and look at a way of metering our staying true to ourselves in a way, that is, by letting go of all of those distractions, all those emotional charges, which then lead to dramas, whether it's with our partners or our parents or our siblings or our bosses or our neighbors. If we were free from the emotional charges, from the drama, the story connected to all of it, and we were able to just abide in a restful, quiet place inside, and we can be as wild as we want to, but internally we're actually quiet, and externally whatever way we choose to be. What a different kind of world we would have. You know, it was in January, just a couple of months ago, that I was invited to speak at the Enlightenment Society at the United Nations. I spoke there when I came back from India a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun, and I spoke about creative conflict resolution. And I wanted to bring forth to people that were attending that from the UN this idea of learning to experientially stand in somebody else's shoes. Because only when the Israelis do that with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians with the Israelis, and the Americans with the Iraqis, and the Shia with the Sunni, and on and on and on, can we begin to think realistically of something we call world peace. Otherwise, it just ain't going to happen. It's not a piece of paper. Now, we can go another layer deep and say the only people who are qualified to even enter the conversation about world peace are people who are at peace themselves. Not because they can write the word on a piece of paper and sign their name and say, yes, we want world peace, Mitchell Rabin. But only Mitchell Rabin or anyone else who really is embodying a state of peace. These are the only people really qualified to see it through, because peace is not a treaty. It's a state of being. And from that, it becomes a commitment to the world at large to sustain that state of being collectively. Just thoughts for you. And if we had a way of measuring our peaceful state, or a lack of a peaceful state, how powerful to bring an objective measurement using basically a classical device known and proven in the world of neurophysiology of the EEG, and bring it into, let's say, a more home use, residential, domestic use instead of clinical, wherein people can just get taste of their own inner peace and learn to build on it through positive reinforcement. This is just ideas to consider and think about. Anybody who would want to give a call, certainly feel free, 888-873-4643. Now, how does our health get created? How does illness get created is the other part of that question. Well, all that has been discussed regarding the work of Lester Levenson comes out of an entire way of viewing health and illness, which has at its base the understanding that all illness comes from mind. And it comes from a mind that is not rooted in itself, in the true self. Let's just take that as a premise. So if there are mental contents floating about in the mind, getting a bit rigidified because of emotions that are building up around a certain idea, like, let's say, one's parent has something like cancer, let's just say. So what happens in the child? But the child first feels upset about the parent having cancer. And then they start to be concerned about themselves. Oh my God, does that mean then that I too will have cancer? Is it genetic? Well, if you listen to common conventional science, you might come to such a conclusion. But in fact, if you pay attention to the work of cellular biologist Bruce Lipton, who wrote the book The Biology of Belief, and who we have several interviews with on our website under the video library, you can find them and get his encapsulated story in a couple of DVDs. You will see that, in fact, our mind are programming ourselves. And if you then turn a little further and look at this body of work, which is the brainchild of both Dr. Hammer of the New Medicine and Dr. Claude Sabat of Total Biology, we see that this kind of programming of ourselves is intergenerational. It's genealogical. It is passed on genetically, but not physically, genetically, the way we would ordinarily think, but psychogenetically. So we really do inherit ideas from our parents. And even in the biblical sense, it's interesting, there is a certain principle in total biology that the unresolved conflicts, emotional conflicts of the parents, become the potential physical conflict or illness of the child. Of course, the biblical way is a little bit more moralistic, saying that the sins of the father are visited upon the son, and we are stripping away the moral idea there and just saying that emotional issues of the parents, unresolved over time, become the potential physicalized conflicts of the offspring. Wow, what a different approach. So give an example. Someone comes to a total biology therapist because their child has leukemia. Well, leukemia, we know, is considered a form of cancer of the blood involving white blood cells. Now, of course, we know that modern medicine would take that child and start to chemo it and radiate it and want to even pull the blood out of the infant or child and replace it with someone else's blood. Wow. If you think about what that's doing to that child, it's quite extraordinary. So, in total biology, because it involves blood, it involves, guess what? Family. Because bloodlines are family lines. It's lineage. So anything that happens in the blood is considered to be an emotional conflict relating to family. So the total biology therapist would think of this whole issue as a parental issue before they would think of it as the child's issue, going according to the principle that I just described, that the emotional issues of the parents become the potential physical issue of the child. Now, what could a young child do to be diagnosed with something called leukemia at age 1 year old or 2 years old? I mean, it's almost not possible. So, tracing it back, what we have in the case of leukemia is this idea of self-devaluation in the family clan, that a person may feel, a child feels that in the eyes of the family, they're not worthy. And it's not a mild thing. It's, in this case, a rather extreme condition. And the child repeats this idea and buries the idea inside his or her psyche and lives out of that idea that the child is not good enough. And if it goes deep enough for long enough, unexcised, unexorcised, it becomes a physical problem. If not for him or herself, for his or her child. And that's what happens in this case. So a total biology therapist would speak to both parents and trace into their personal lives and their family lives where and when and how they began to feel devalued in the family. It could have been there was some family accident, and it was felt by the parents that this child could have done something for someone else and didn't, and the child felt shame, and the parents helped the child feel shame. I'm just giving this as a hypothetical example. And through this, the child carries this feeling of shame and self-devaluation into their adult lives, and then they get married, and then they have children. And yet this feeling of not being valuable continues forward and shows up in any number of different ways in their lives. And marry someone who perhaps shares the same issue. They have a child. That child is carrying that issue. So it happens that, and this wasn't able to be developed further, but the gentleman that I bring to New York, Gilbert Renaud, did work in such a situation with a set of parents who had been fortunate enough to hear about total biology and sought him out and did a session and stopped the blood transplant of the infant long enough to have a couple of sessions. And what was found is when the parents began to get in touch with their own emotional conflict and release, by getting to the source of those conflicts, their own issues and their own inner suffering and pain, that infant began to smile for the first time virtually in its life. Totally because of the quantum field, having nothing to do with treatment of the infant itself. The child felt a shift in the parents and their own emotional lives, and that had a corresponding effect on the infant. That's what working in energy medicine is about. That's what relating to the quantum field is about, and grounding psychology and psychotherapy and all inner work in understanding of the quantum. So I want to leave you with that idea, and for you to ponder it. And if you want to learn more information about it, you can go to our website, www.abetterworld.net. And I have an article on this called under writings called Total Biology. And there are, in the video library, as I mentioned, several DVDs on this subject. Claude Sabat, Claude Valliere, Gilbert Renaud, and Edward van den Bogart are the main ones. But Bruce Lipton, cellular biologist, brings so much to the table in this regard, and there are videos of him as well. And in May, we are intending to have a couple of more classes on this subject, so certainly feel free to contact us at 212-420-0800 and at the website where you can register for these. We need to have a certain basic number of people attending and registering soon for this to happen. But we're planning to have a level 1 of 3 on May 9th through 11th and May 16th through 18th on children's illnesses and disorders. And because we're all children, we're all included. So on that note, I'm very glad that you joined us again today. Thanks so much for listening. We have some other very fun shows coming up in the very near future. My name is Mitchell Jay Rabin for A Better World, and feel free to join us on our newsletter at www.abetterworld.net, and there you can also learn more about the release meter and what I also call the Zen meter under our recommended resources. I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.